Now and check in with Stan Shamu, standing by for us in Melbourne. Stan, great to see you there this morning. First of all, let's take a look at what happened in the United States overnight. We've got the S&P at record high. How are investors interpreting what we've heard from the US government?
Morning, Kate. Absolutely. It seems like that last-minute deal by US leaders has certainly helped the S&P rally to fresh record highs. But the focus has now switched from the fiscal perspective and straight back to the monetary policy side of things, whereby the Fed's tapering timeline is now firmly in focus going forward. I think there's a couple of factors weighing on the greenback at the moment as it dropped 1%. The dollar index dropped 1% overnight and dropped below that 80 level, and that's basically this short-term sort of looking deal by US leaders, which will probably see, of course, a renewed negotiation in the new year. And at the same time, the fact that we don't have enough data to really support an early tapering by the Fed is another concern at the moment for investors. So we saw the greenback broadly offered against most of the majors, and at the moment it certainly will be a situation whereby the various Fed members that are hitting the wires at the moment will take a lot of attention, I suppose, as investors try to dissect exactly when we can expect tapering. Overnight we had Fed member Esther George coming out and saying she still thinks that tapering should start by the end of the year because it's getting too expensive, and of course at the moment she feels that the amount of data we've got or information that the Fed has is more than enough for them to justify tapering. However, other members like Evans are still very conservative, and they still feel we need to take a very cautious approach to tapering and of course ensure that they don't derail the recovery in the face of some fiscal problems. Now we've also got quite a number of Fed members out later today. We've got Dudley, we've got Stein, we've got Evans again on the wires, so it'll be an interesting next few weeks for the US dollar, particularly as some of those data releases that were held back start to come out again, and I think next week will be particularly huge from a US data perspective.
Stan, also, as you mentioned there, the Aussie shooting through the 96 mark against the greenback overnight, and it'll be in focus again today because we've got Reserve Bank Governor Glenn Stevens speaking, and we're also going to have a deluge of data out from China. Where are you looking at in terms of key levels for the local today?
Yeah, no, the Aussie has been remarkably resilient against the US dollar over the past week. Of course, it really was sparked by those RBA minutes, which really did indicate that they don't really have, they don't feel there's a need for an imminent cut. And at the moment, the economy is looking like it's turned a corner, and everything is looking a little bit more positive. Today is obviously a massive day. We had seen the Aussie rally to 96.47 against the greenback overnight. That was actually the high, and it's still hanging around those levels at the moment, which with an obvious hawkish sort of tone or approach to the Aussie dollar heading into Glenn Stevens' speech at midday today. He's just expected to basically reiterate exactly what was in the minutes, and of course highlight the fact that the Aussie markets the Aussie economy is looking a little bit better. The recent rate cuts are starting to really show strong signs for the local economy. Potentially we could get comments on the property market, and of course the Aussie dollar strength, and as well just some of the recent recovery we're seeing in the iron ore price and iron ore miners. And of course it does look like with the current positioning it's very bullish at the moment, and there's always room for disappointment in such a situation, and we still think it will start to consolidate around that 96 level for a little while. It's had a big run in a very short space of time, so perhaps there will be some sort of squaring off of longs at some stage today. Of course, we also have China data, which is basically a raft of it coming out at 1 p.m. We've got the GDP number, which would be the highlight. The market's looking for a number of 7.8%. The range of analysts is between about 7.4 and 8.2%. So anything sort of towards the top end of that range will really appease investors. But that's not all. We also have industrial production, foreign direct investment due out, and retail sales out of China. So it's really a huge day for the Aussie dollar, and there will be a lot of positioning ahead of all this data, and of course reaction following the data.
Stan, opening calls for the market. SPI futures up about 0.5% at this stage. We had a mix in the United States overnight. It's hard to, I guess, take the Dow as a judge of sentiment because it was weighed down by IBM and also Goldman Sachs. So are we looking to that S&P record high for our lead?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at a fairly strong open, up 0.6%. We're actually calling it at 5,314 at the moment, and that's exactly where the highest level of the for the year has been, and that was just back in September. So if we manage to break through that, then that'll be a fresh 5.5 year high for the Aussie market. So it looks really positive indeed. And considering all the volatility and noise throughout the week, we've actually done very well. The Aussie market's up nearly 1.5% for the week, should we open at that level. So it's looking fairly positive. We do feel that we'll continue to get strength from the resource names. That big spike up in gold should really benefit some of these gold names. And of course, iron ore posted a seventh straight positive session. That should be pretty good for some of the iron ore miners as well. There's been a few broker changes following some of these recent reports and company updates. Atlas Iron, which has had a big run, has been downgraded by Citi to a sell at the moment. But we don't think it will really derail this stock as a lot of investors continue to get back into the stock after a long period of underperformance. At the same time, we've got Santos set to release its third quarter output report. So there's certainly a lot to look out for. But from a broker change perspective as well, there are quite a number of stocks to keep an eye on after some fairly positive or negative reports this week.
Okay, Stan Shamu from IG, thanks so much. So an opening call there of 5,314 for the local market.
Cheers, Kate.
Well, Treasurer Joe Hockey has promised to give a more realistic assessment of how the global economy will impact the Australian budget more than his predecessors. He believes it will ensure future revenue forecasts start from a more appropriate base when putting together the budget. The pledge follows the former Labor government's continually having